Good morning, everybody. Here today with Chris Winberg from Greenkey Technologies for the inaugural EC1 Partners FinTech podcast. Big welcome to Chris. Thanks for coming on.
No problem. Always a pleasure. Nice to see you, Rich.
Yeah, nice to see you too, mate. And I thought before we get into kind of your head of customer success at Greenkey, and before we get into your role and Greenkey, thought it'd be interesting to find out a little bit more about you. So, you're from the East End. Tell me about your childhood.
Yeah, so originally sort of East London, Essex borders is where I grew up. Sort of grew up and schooled in this area, and basically have stayed in this area and sort of moved back to this area after a stint working abroad. So my broking career kind of wound its way over to the Far East, and I've still ended up coming back to this area. So it must still have something to offer.
Exactly. So did you miss the childhood days then? Tell me about what were you like growing up? What kind of child were you?
Yeah, it's to be honest, I had a great childhood in this area. It's kind of right on the border between East London and Essex, relatively green. School was a great time for me, and still have a lot of friends that live in this area. So as a kid, I grew up with a lot of kind of outdoor activities. I was a good golfer back in the day, before work got in the way, and lots of other things. I mean, did a lot of music through school, and as I say, I've sort of stayed in touch with most of my friends from that part of my life. So a lot of good memories from here.
So a frustrated musician or golfer?
Both, I think. Yeah, both at the
just
time.
Frustrated.
Yeah, just frustrated. Yeah.
Fine. And when so you had quite a decent career in broking. When did you realise you wanted to get into the financial markets and be an interdealer broker?
Yeah, so really, I guess when I left school after my A levels, I knew that I didn't want to go to university. I just felt like I wanted to get out and earn some money and make my own way for a bit. And I fell into broking really after a couple of years of middle office roles. I took a job initially at an investment bank, so I went to work for HSBC. I did a stint at a stockbroking firm called Killick & Co that I think is still running in some form. And then basically just through a friend got into broking at a firm called Eurobrokers, which is now part of BGC. And at the time, didn't know much about it, but knew I wanted to be more on the sort of trading floor and in the sort of thick of it all. And it appealed to me. I went and kind of checked it out, and it was fairly rough and ready at that point, at that stage of the kind of broking floors. But great experience, and good memories.
I think I remember Eurobrokers on Houndsditch. I did some work experience there. I don't think I'm impressed because they didn't offer me a job. But I remember there's a massive board, and the younger guys used to kind of update the board with figures. Is that how you started?
Yeah, exactly that. So I kind of got in just as things were moving from the kind of whiteboard setup where you've got 30 people shouting prices at you, and you're trying to capture all of that on a whiteboard, to doing the same thing but on an electronic platform, so a kind of pricing platform. So you have to make sure that you've got those prices in quickly so that they tag to the right kind of market references and bond data and all that sort of stuff. So started really at the bottom there, getting the breakfasts in, getting the coffees, putting the price on the board, writing tickets. But it did, in hindsight, you had to be pretty robust to survive at all. It kind of did give me a good grounding in the sort of trade life cycle and how things worked, really at ground level. It was a rough environment, though. I mean, I think I like to think about my years in broking. Each year was like dog years kind of thing. I think it probably each year as a broker probably took 5 off my life expectancy, but it was good fun at the time, definitely as a younger man.
And you must have some great stories. But we don't need to go into all of the.
They're not all podcast worthy, unfortunately. But I can tell a few offline for you.
Do you remember your first client?
I do. Yeah. So I actually I started out on I was a Euro swaps trainee, basically. The first time I actually kind of sat down as a broker on a desk was actually on Scandinavian swaps. And I was covering the guy at JP Morgan who had the Swedish krona book there. So it was a decent sort of account to start off with. I got lucky, really. You know, there's lots of trainees kind of came and went in that period, and I kind of weathered the storm and eventually got some accounts. And the rest is history. Kind of stuck with it for quite a while. It ended up being a sort of 13 or 14 year portion of my career, basically. So good times.
Because you moved to Asia. Tell me about that.
I did. So after a few years in London, so Eurobrokers got bought out by BGC. I stayed there for about another year or so, and then got put in touch with a guy out in Asia. So I ended up moving out to Tokyo for about 6 years in the end. So I was doing yen interest rate options there, initially at ICAP and then for Tradition, both of which are now sort of the desks are still going. A few of the guys are still out there. But yeah, came to the end of that stint, moved back to London, as I said, same sort of area, settled down. I was still broking at that point. I moved back with Tradition and then had a move to Tullets, which was my last stop on the broking wheel. And that was kind of where I started to see things change. And, after a long stint of traveling and the sort of long hours and the anxiety that comes with it, I started to get kind of itchy feet and feel like I might be ready for a change, as well as kind of, I started to settle down. I was married and life was changing. So.
Yeah, I think that's when we first met. You were, I think, kind of looking to move maybe into something different, away from broking.
That's
and
right.
Kind of, the buzz of FinTech in this new kind of new markets, I think, was taking off for sure. I mean, what was it that you saw that, in FinTech that you wanted to get involved in?
Yeah, I think there was a number of things that affected the sort of that got me to the point I was at with broking. I think when I started, I was relatively young. So when I picked up customers, particularly in Asia, I was still only in my early 20s, and a lot of the guys that I was talking to were, in their late 30s, 40s, 50s even, and were
ancient.
Well, I mean, yeah, God forbid. But I mean, it was as my career then went on, a lot of those guys left, moved over to the buy side, were just trading for themselves, retired, thankfully, if they've made lots of money out of it. And so my sort of existing customer base was really, really tapering off. And along with that, there was a real change in the market. There was a lot of obviously scandal around the market generally towards the latter part of my career, with the kind of LIBOR fixing and all these other things that really accelerated sort of regulatory change.
Yeah.
And it changed what brokers did a lot of the time. Broking for me was a relationship business, and my side of it, there was nothing sordid or underhand about what was going on, but it was a job where you provided a lot of market color, a lot of trading signals and things to traders, and a lot of this compliance and regulatory change was really kind of trying to remove that part of that life cycle. So I saw that directly impacting my business. And
was that in terms of, sorry, Chris, was that in terms of like people like Big Brother watching what you're saying, or how you're interacting with clients?
Yeah, I think just more so how you interacted with clients, because the Big Brother, the sort of recording side of it was always there. You always had everything you did was on a recorded line, on a Bloomberg terminal, on whatever chat system it was. Everything was recorded. I remember going back to playback trades with earphones on in a back room, rewinding a tape literally to work out what had happened with a trade or whatever. But that was always part of it. I think it was just the way you had to approach pricing and market indications and the commentary that you provided around the market activity. It was just all getting reined in, and it became it became much harder, and I think still is harder for the brokers to differentiate themselves from what's already publicly available on the screens. It's getting harder to stand out from screen trading as a broker, depending on what the asset class is, I hasten to add. But I just felt like in the bit that I was in, which was interest rate swaps and options, it was definitely changing. The role of the broker was changing, and I felt like it was time to look at what else was out there. So,
And that's pretty tough time, I imagine, when you've been in a career for like 10 years or however long, and
yeah,
you decide that something, I need to do something different.
yeah.
Was it daunting? How did you find that time?
It was, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of brokers have moved between broking firms, but it doesn't normally involve an application process or, a CV being rewritten or anything
Mm.
like that. So I really, for 15 years or so, hadn't even thought about doing a CV. It was all just, the movement was just organic through people I knew and the movement of customers and things like that. And I just felt completely, blinded by what steps I needed to take, and there was such a sort of wealth of options out there. Even to, I'm not ashamed to admit, I didn't even know what a lot of the titles meant that I was looking at in the roles and things. It can be quite daunting when you don't know what all the C-level kind of acronyms mean, and you don't know whether you should be going for junior sales or senior sales. You feel like you're more one than the other, but you just don't know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was very sort of daunting prospect. Not to mention the fact that another sort of catalyst for this was I married and settled and felt really happy in my home life. My son was actually on the way as well, and the sort of work side of things was really suffering, in the background. And I just felt a real need to get this done. But as you know, it doesn't always happen overnight. It does take time, and you have to invest in the process. So yeah, it was daunting at first.
And then your first foray into fintech, um, it definitely used your broking experience and skills.
Yes, yeah, definitely. So the thing that was difficult, I think, looking back on it, that to try and break out of broking was, as a broker, your CV doesn't typically jump out when you go to enterprise application processes or even to fintech vendors and things. It's not always, that clear that you've had that much career progression, because a lot of the time it's a movement from one asset class to another, or
Mm.
one firm to another, driven by customer movement, maybe a change of center, maybe a different location. But I was just finding that I wasn't getting anywhere with the application process. And you and I spoke, and I think, the skills that you have as a broker, whether you realize them or not, sometimes you sort of disregard them, but you tend to be pretty thick skinned after a few years doing that job. Um, Tend to be confident because you spend most of the day screaming prices at people and taking a lot of kind of shells from things that are going on in the course of battle. And I think the real sort of strong thing was I spent years just working on relationships with people and making sure that I was selling myself as well as the underlying products and the underlying sort of service. So I think people are often quick to sort of dismiss the skills that they've got when they're coming out of broking. And I think that does give you a little bit of fear of even trying sometimes. You sort of think this is as good as it's going to get. And you do have to sort of get out there and do a few interviews and go through the process to sort of work out where there is a fit. But there is, and to your point, I landed the job, thankfully, with your help at Cloud9. And it was really encouraging to me in that interview process that I was still relevant, and actually I could be relevant for the second half of my career and actually do something entirely different, and invest what I knew and had literally lived on the front end of things to add value into people that are building products and selling software and trying to understand that market to sell back into it. I had something to offer, and that was really sort of a big relief for me to sort of find that and get started on part two of my career, basically.
Yeah, and I think what we see in fintech recruitment is broadly kind of two scenarios where either someone is highly experienced selling technology platforms, vendor applications into financial markets, or someone is coming from the financial markets as a user of those products and comes with that angle.
Yeah, Yeah, for
So
sure. I mean, I definitely missed out on some opportunities in the direct application process because I just didn't have. If you look at my CV, I didn't have enterprise sales experience. You know, there was nothing that led them to believe I could carry a quota carrying role and hit and exceed targets sort of thing. I was just a broker sort of thing. So it was definitely good to get out and find that I still had value to add and could sort of bring a different side to things for some of these fintech firms.
and it must have been very different environment, you know, that kind of buzz of a trading floor to going into like I know a small office. You know, Cloud9 at the time was pretty small office, like 4 people in there at the moment at that
Yeah,
time.
I think yeah, maybe 4 or 5 of us at the time. Yeah, it did take some getting used to. I think it took me a couple of months before I stopped asking my boss if it was okay to go out and get lunch in case there was someone that wasn't covering what I was doing and things. So the
Like
panic took a
Shawshank
while.
Redemption.
Yeah, the panic took a while to subside. Yeah, I was institutionalized basically.
Yeah.
But I think that was I did take a while to get used to the pace. I was very used to a sort of reactionary environment where, you hit a button and ask a question and you get an instant and sometimes not very pleasant answer, but you get an answer pretty quickly. It's pretty definitive usually. Um, and that process of, selling to someone but them not having a decision immediately took some getting used to. You send someone an email or put a call in or even get a demo done and you sort of think, well, this is a done deal, and actually it could take weeks or months or however long or not happen at all. And it does it takes time to get used to, but it was also just a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways because I'd spent, I joke about it, but I spent a decade and a half worrying about leaving my seat, because I lived and breathed, between market hours, that if you got up and were away from your desk for too long, you'd miss the trade that would make your month or your quarter or whatever it was. And actually, that was a really nice feeling to think, I've got time to think about this and how I'm going to approach it and how I'm going to present myself and the products, fine tune your pitch and understand the product and stuff. And it was that process of even being out of the office but still doing your job was, it was great. It was really, really encouraging for me. And I felt like that was a real kind of turning point for me, was to understand that there was a life outside of what I'd known previously, sort of thing.
Yeah. So you've reinvented yourself into fintech, and you spend some time at Cloud9, and then you make a move to another kind of similar type of organization, but focus much more on the compliance angle, voice mobile recording. Was that right?
That's right. So I moved from Cloud9 to VoxSmart, which is mobile compliant recording. So it captures voice recordings, WhatsApp messaging, and things for financial markets. Again, I've been lucky in that the vendors that I found really kind of played to my strengths in terms of what they needed, which was an understanding of how the end users operate, what the trade life cycle actually looks like, the reasons why people don't use software. There's always a danger, as you know, with vendors, particularly in sort of technology, that something can become shelfware so easily when, if it hasn't got really well-defined features that the traders or brokers are asking you for or crying out for, it's so easy to just sort of get sidelined and it's just another thing that ends up in the drawer or just minimized on someone's screen. So I think, along the way, I've really found that the ability to say, I don't think they would like that because A, B, and C has really been useful. And I think that was the case at Cloud9 and at VoxSmart and likewise here at Greenkey. So.
Yeah. And so now kind of Greenkey, head of customer success, pretty good title. Tell me more about kind of what that means.
Yeah, it's I mean, the move out of sales and into customer success, kind of account management, account farming, was again something I thought long and hard about, but I've really enjoyed it. And I think again it's kind of almost reverted back to what I feel are my strong points, which is really managing relationships, growing relationships. And it's been great to get into that role. And I actually was the first person in customer success and Greenkey So I was head of a team of 1 initially, and now it's growing. We've got four, soon to be 5 people on the customer success team, and yeah, going from strength to strength. I mean, I have found again that the sort of market relevance is really useful. Greenkey is an NLP provider, which is basically, long story short, taking unstructured conversations that you're not getting any value out of, or you're losing value in, and then process them using our NLP engines, and then we highlight what's important or valuable for you. So sort of use cases are things like taking in chat data, vast amounts of email, chat conversations, historical audio files, even real-time voice conversations. Customers sort of tell us that about 70 or 80% of the insights that they wish they'd capture are getting lost on these platforms. And we're able to actually process this data and then return it back to the customer with the key criteria that they specifically are looking for. And it really kind of adds a lot of value. I think, we work as a partner with our customers, which is great for me again in this role, because we really, the value add with Greenkey isn't at point of sale. It's as you go into that life cycle, and we start to really kind of embed these NLP processes throughout the firm, sort of thing. So it's a long-term play, but definitely one that I've really enjoyed, and the customer success role has been great for us.
Definitely. And so kind of now at Greenkey, you're working with some of the leading investment banks, and I suppose kind of, for having a career like you've had, where you've constantly spoken to or dealt with traders at these leading investment banks, you're used to that. But in terms of the other kind of stakeholders in the process, how's that been different for you?
Yeah, I think it's again sort of going back to the broken days. It's that kind of fundamental ability of having different customers, all with different personalities, all with different requirements, and being able to sort of adapt to those situations, being able to think quickly, but also to sort of know when to step back. And yeah, it's been really, really good. I mean, I guess I was relatively fearless going into FinTech, because a lot of the time I didn't even know what the titles meant. It was just someone that I was going to meet or present to, and that was good. It was humanizing in a way, because I just was going to meet a person, and actually I was probably less daunted than if I'd known what CTO meant, or CIO, or whatever it was at the time, or thought more about it. I probably would have been more nervous. But yeah, Greenkey has been great. I think it's interesting. It's a great prospect, because a lot of cases it's not a displacement. We're not replacing one phone system for another. We're going with something new, cutting edge. It's something that typically every investment bank on the street has been interested in, or has started working on, or are trying to do for some time. And Greenkey is an accelerator for them. It's a time to market thing. The banks would get there eventually. Any buy side firm, brokerage, yes, they could invest in it and get there. We're an accelerator for their time to market, and we put in the work in sort of cleaning the data, getting these NLP models ready for them, and they're kind of ready for service. So we can go in on a consultancy kind of approach and say, look, here's how we usually integrate this, and really sort of move them forwards in that process of adopting NLP.
And as you say, it must be hugely exciting where you're involved in a really kind of new technology that's kind of solving issues and problems that maybe clients didn't think there was a possibility to do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I think we're moving into the kind of second phase of workflows as well now, which is really exciting to see. So we've got kind of the stuff that we've worked on for the last few years, which I would say is our kind of table stakes workflows now, which is things like voice dictation and form population, generating insight reports and things like that. And we're now moving into this wave of kind of automation. We're helping customers build chatbots that sit over data sort of sources or interact with customers, helping them to build suggestion engines and ingest kind of pre and post sales data, and look at trends around products and customer activity and things, and even down to things like Tableau and ClickView and things, to actually help them visualize the data and how they actually extract it from our engine and get it into that kind of presentable aesthetic format where they can actually use it and learn from it. So yeah, it's really good. It's almost like a video game. We've kind of unlocked the next level to move up to, and I think it's exciting to see that there's always an evolution of how the products are going to get used. So yeah, it's going from strength to strength, thankfully.
That's great. And what's the newest thing out with Greenkey at the moment? What's the latest game, if you like?
Yeah, so we're actually interestingly, we've kind of branched off, and we've got a version of our Focus Studio product, which is a kind of annotation tool effectively, but we've got something that's specifically being used for the buy side, really. So it's kind of using our toolkit to allow you to ingest documents and transcripts. So because of our skills with the kind of voice to text piece anyway, and the NLP engines, we can generate transcripts in real time, or you can actually ingest them from another third-party provider, and then tag them for creating your own models. And I think that's the interesting thing with Greenkey over the last couple of years is, we've realized that the banks don't want an out-of-the-box closed solution. They don't necessarily want you to do it end-to-end. And everything is about toolkits and customization. They are really appreciative of the work we've done so far, but the last 10% they'd like to do themselves typically. And I think us giving them the ability to do that and the tools to do that, it is our strongest suit at the moment. So we're finding that giving people this environment, they can ingest like an earnings call or the minutes from a Fed meeting, for example, take one of our base models and then customize it and have their own model that they've created to use for other similar sort of document types and things. So that's our kind of cutting edge stuff at the moment. But yeah, wow, that kind of flexible solution with the kind of toolkits to customize is definitely the way forward for us.
So it's almost like you've evolved from kind of helping your clients save time with automation and kind of form filling through kind of the NLP that you have, but also now to generate alpha and help them make money.
Exactly. Yeah, it's two things really. It is that kind of alpha generation side of things. It's also just time to market. Being able to stand up things like chatbots and automate a service. The cost savings obviously are tremendous on that side of things, and also just being able to harness this data and really put it into practice on the desk sort of thing has been really significant for us. But yeah, we're definitely seeing that sort of evolution of workflows and really moving into, I guess, a sort of another era where we've got another sort of professional services and sort of consultancy side of the business where we're really helping people to just take this on to the next level. Yeah.
And it sounds like you've really found your home at Greenkey. Having kind of been now your third FinTech, you're like an expert now. What would you say, when you look at company now and Greenkey, how it differs from other FinTechs you've worked at, and what's made it so much more enjoyable for you and successful?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed both FinTech spins prior to Greenkey. I think the culture here is really great. They really prioritize having a great sort of candid, open working culture. There's kind of, you're not overly aware of any hierarchy here where there's a kind of chain of command as such. It's very kind of open line of conversation always, which I really like. But also, I have really enjoyed this move slightly out of sales into customer success. I think it's been a really good fit for me, and it was a fit that I sort of attribute to Greenkey because it wasn't what I was looking for at the time. As you know, because you placed me here, I was saying to you that I wanted to keep moving up in sales roles, and it wasn't until I met AT and the guys at Greenkey that they sort of proposed this customer success role, and I kind of thought, I don't know, am I kind of quitting on sales too early, or am I leaving anything on the table? And actually, I'm really grateful I did go down this route because it's a better fit for me, and I've really enjoyed. I think that's why now I see this sort of longer term career here is because I took a sort of chance on stepping out of what I was doing again, And this is just a really good fit for me, both in the company, the people, the products that I kind of understand, have an affinity with as well, and just this role.
And so that's really interesting, because I think, the more and more I talk to people in the market, this word culture and environment is so important. I don't think anyone wants to be a number in a role now. That you want to be able to kind of have your input and really kind of thrive in an environment that allows you to grow. So do you think that kind of AT seeing that role in you and putting together an environment where people can speak their mind, that's kind of the key for you, is it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's very easy to confuse your sort of working environment with culture, because you can purport to have an amazing culture, but culture isn't a sort of football table, or a pool table and beers in the fridge, or free snacks, or whatever it is. It's about the people and how they interact with each other, and it's about mutual respect. And actually, it doesn't matter. Greenkey has a very flexible working culture, so I'm very rarely in an office, except when I'm going to customer sites these days, not least because of the current situation, but even prior to that. And actually, it's nothing about your location. We have people that work all over the US and the UK, and we feel connected, and that's nothing to do with where we're sitting or even the company. It's sort of how we treat each other, basically. So yeah, it's been a great experience so far, and I'm sure is hopefully, touch wood, it's going to carry on that way. So
excellent. And appreciate your time, Chris. It's been really great to hear your insights. Just my last question, I'd say, as someone that's made that move, what would your kind of top tips be for someone looking to get out of broking or kind of an investment banking type role into fintech?
Yeah, I would say, I'm not just trying to sort of play to your requirements as well, but it did really help with me going to talk to you and to find a recruiter that you trust and that you kind of have an affinity with, because you need to have some help getting your CV up to scratch, because typically that's not something that's a strong point when you're trying to get out of that career. And just take some time to look at the roles that are out there, get some advice on the roles that are out there, because coming out of the broking stint, I just immediately assumed that it had to be a sales job. I just thought it must be a sales job. I'm just going to have it's the nearest fit to what the kind of comp package looks like, to what I'm used to, and it's kind of driven by a target, and I'll be fine with that. And actually, I had a good time doing sales, but it wasn't necessarily the perfect fit for me. And I think, get some advice, join some online forums and things as well. LinkedIn is a great tool. There's plenty of other kind of apps like Workplace and things where you can actually go out and start finding out about other people who've made the same transition as you want to, give you some advice on where your skill set might fit, and don't sort of pull the trigger too soon on anything. Just get some sort of market context and find out what might suit.
That's great advice. Thanks, Chris. Really good to talk to you again as usual, and hopefully we'll catch up soon. But thanks for coming on.
Hope so. You're welcome. Great to see you.
Cheers, Chris.
Cheers.